So is it better to get a car on a PCP finance agreement, or does it make more sense to buy it outright? Well, it is a little bit more complex than that. There are many factors, many variables at play, but looking at this, the Taycan, did I do the right thing getting it on a PCP, or should I have bought it outright? We'll take a look at the numbers in a bit, but before we get there, I wanted to discuss the last video I did, which was around the options that you have at the end of the PCP agreement, because it did pretty well. There were quite a few comments on that, and as always, if you have commented, massively appreciated. But a lot of the comments saying that the PCP has absolutely saved your ass in that video, and I think you could argue that yes, it has really saved me quite a bit, but that wasn't the point of that video. The point of that video was specifically around the option that Porsche was pushing, or at least strongly recommending I do at the end of the PCP, because quite a few of you missed that on the video, it looks like, or I wasn't clear enough in making that point. But Porsche were trying to get me to refinance that GFV, that £94,000. They were saying that a popular option for people at the end of the PCP, a popular option, i.e. hint hint, nudge nudge, do this, was that people refinance that GFV. Really? Is that a popular option? Okay, maybe if you've got a 911 and it's holding its value pretty well, but is anybody refinancing a GFE on a Taycan right now? Is anyone? I would be really surprised if they are. And if you have, do let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. What was the reasoning behind this? Why did you think that was a viable option? Because honestly and frankly, I don't think that anyone is refinancing the GFE on a Taycan right now, or I'd be very surprised if they were. So that was the frustration, that was my annoyance, if you like, that Porsche were kind of putting that forward as a viable and popular option when it makes zero sense at all. But this car and the situation I'm in now, did I do the right thing getting it on a PCP, or should I have bought it outright? Well, when I signed up for this, we have to remember it was really at the height of car craziness, that post-COVID boom where values were holding out steady, cars were being flipped for more than they were worth, and people were just going crazy with nothing else to spend their hard-earned cash on. Holidays out the window, let's all buy cars instead. Let's all do our houses up, all of that spare cash. And it really was helping values. And here is, I think, what was the biggest mistake that finance companies did throughout that time, as they were using what was, or what should have been seen as potentially a really big blip in the market, to kind of base those future values on. That was a mistake. That is something that should never really have happened, and I'm sure there is a lot of regret in the departments that calculate or look at those GFVs going forwards. It should never really have happened, but equally you could argue that Porsche did shift an awful lot of Taycans off the back of that. Those pretty strong GFVs really meant that the finance stacked up, it looked strong, and people were getting on board with Taycans because of those good finance packages that Porsche, backed by VWFS, could offer. It meant they sold a lot of cars, and sell a lot of Taycans they did. Figures though recently are a far cry from what they were previously in terms of the sales figures. Let's have a look at what I've spent on this car over its lifetime. And when I looked at the financial numbers that I've spent over the lifetime of this car, even I winced a bit. And that is what finance excels at, really hiding what you're actually spending on a car over its lifetime, because it does add up, those monthlies. So what have I spent on this car under a PCP? Well, I'm paying just over $1,600 a month on this car, which is quite a lot of money, right? But over the course of those 3 years, 36 monthly payments, that adds up to a massive £57,600, which is a significant chunk of change. And of course that doesn't include the deposit. Yep, I paid another 20k up front into this car, so that is a massive £77,600 I've spent on this car over its lifetime. And I'm not seeing any of that back. That is sunk cost, that is lost cost, because of the situation that we're in with Taycans and where they are versus the GFV. So it is a lot of money. There is no escaping that. There is a lot of money that I've spent on this car over its lifetime, to own this car for 3 years. Have I enjoyed it? Do I think it's worth it? Absolutely, I do. I really have enjoyed this car. It's been a good experience, my first ever EV. But how would that look if I'd bought the car outright, if I'd paid for it outright with my own money? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing that versus a PCP? Well, if I'd bought the car outright, the car cost £150,000 with the options. Don't forget, Gen 2s and recent price increases meant that the Taycan is a much more expensive proposition yet again versus where they were in 2022 when I bought this car. So yes, 150k, and you're probably looking at about 170 to 180k for the same now, which is a huge up, in fact maybe more, a huge uplift, huge uplift. But what would the car be worth now? Well, realistically, the only way I could viably shift this off my books at the moment is by dunking it out to one of those car auction companies like a We Buy Any Car or a Motorway. If I wanted to put it on Auto Trader, it would likely, and maybe get a bit more, it would likely sit there for an awful long time, a hideously long length of time. And that is purely because right now, yes, there are a lot of Taycans on Auto Trader, so there's a lot of competition and you're going to be haggled down. You're probably going to get a lot of time wasters, tire kickers. Selling on Auto Trader privately right now would be nothing short of a nightmare. Hence the reason I have said that We Buy Any Car is probably the only realistic way of getting shot of this car relatively quickly. So what would I be looking at on We Buy Any Car right now? Well, £58,000 is the figure there, which is, to be frank, a little bit more than I anticipated. So what would that mean? Well, if I wanted to sell the car now, if I wanted shot of it, I would have realised a £92,000 loss on this car. So I would have lost more money buying this car outright than the finance that I took, but not a significant amount of money given the overall costs. It would have been just over £14,000 difference there or thereabouts to have bought this car outright. But what would that have meant in terms of the approach? Well, by buying the car outright, you're effectively chucking 150k of your own money into this car. That is a lot of money that you could invest elsewhere. You could have it in a high interest account, you could stack it into an investment fund, you could make that money work a bit better than it being sat in the car depreciating. So for me, it is the better option to have got it on finance. It's stacked up absolutely, and finance packages right now on the Taycan do not look attractive. Of course, the hideous depreciation, the normal depreciation, I guess, has been factored in, and the finance offerings really do not look good. Of course, APRs are higher than when I signed up for this now as well, so I think they're circa 10% now. I got this on 6.5, which again is pretty good. So I did the right thing by getting this on PCP. We're in a situation now where the only option is to chuck the car back, but it has been enjoyable, and as I said, time for something else. So what should you do? Well, here is the thing. Right now, I think we are back to normal times, and I hope that PCPs and buying outright should marry up pretty nicely at the end. So if you get it on PCP, that GFV you should be looking at now will marry up with what the market should represent at that time, and you might get lucky, maybe the market improves a little bit and prices look a little bit more attractive. But across the board, whether it's a Taycan or whether it's anything else, I think GFVs right now are going to be a lot lower than they used to be, as those companies really try and mitigate any potential risks by being caught out with their trousers down, as they did with this, going forward. So you should be in a situation right now where if you get on board with the PCP, at the end of it, fingers crossed, there shouldn't be any major surprises. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Do stay safe, stay well. See you on the next one, and bye for now.